Or were you wanting one?
Yeah. I can't type that fast. Ready? Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Reno County Commission for July 26th regular meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. And at this time, item 2 is, as always, the Pledge of Allegiance and a prayer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry. I wanted to introduce our pastor this morning, Pastor Ron Devaney with Faith Chapel Community Church. Pastor.
Good morning, everyone. We'll bow our heads and go to prayer. Father in heaven, we just want to thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, your mercy, for your grace. We thank you for your kindness, Lord. Father, I just pray godly wisdom and knowledge and understanding for these men as they make decisions today, Lord, that affect other people's lives. Just give them your wisdom, Lord. We just make this prayer in the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. I think the speaker system might be just a little hot this morning. I hear a little bit of feedback. If we could turn that down just a little bit. Appreciate that. Item 3 is retirement recognition of Pam Adrian. Pam and Carly, you want to come forward? And if you want to speak first, okay. And I'll ask Carla to present this recognition.
So, happy day for us and sad day for us. Pam's been with us for 25 years in the health department, so we want to express our sincere thanks and appreciation for your 25 years of outstanding service to Reno County's health department. Your attention to detail and genuine concern for serving the health needs of Reno County citizens has been remarkable. We wish you good health, happiness, and safe travels in your retirement. We do have Pam's retirement celebration next Thursday afternoon here at the Veterans Room from 1:30 to 3:30 that everyone is invited to. Again, that's next Thursday afternoon from 1:30 to 3:30. Thank you.
Okay. Item 4 is public comment for items not on the agenda. I think we have one person, Jim. Yep. And just state your name and address for the record.
Okay. My name's Jim Preston. I live at 3214 North Halstead Street, and I'm here to advocate for Training and Evaluation Center of Hutchinson Tech Incorporated and the not-for-profits that lost their funding in 2024. I spent about 28 years as a CFO and Vice President of Business and Finance for Tech. I retired in 2019. I started about 1991. So I sent a letter to each and every one of the commissioners. I hope you received those. And I've got a rebuttal back from Mr. Friesen, I'm a constituent of his precinct. So I appreciate that, Daniel. And I appreciate all the work that you guys do. It's not easy. I understand that. Budgeting's not easy. I dealt with that for 28 years. I sat in this, we were way up there in the other building. I went there this morning, as a matter of fact, and got directed down here. Ron's kind of smiling at me there, but I remember sitting in there for about 28 years, garnering the relationship that Reno County, the county has with tech and the funding. I'm not exactly sure where that funding started, but it was before my time. But it's very important to tech, and not, obviously, I'm a big advocate for tech, but how are we going to serve these people? We have to have, tech is function from tax dollars. About, as I look at the annual report, about 90% tax dollars from federal, state, and county. I ask you, how do we, you know, if you cut $100,000 out of somebody's budget, how do we make that up? I feel, and what's going to happen, you're going to cut people. You're going to cut people at tech. You're going to have less service for people with disabilities. This community is always encompassed serving mentally challenged people, development disability people. I ask you, and I know I looked at the budget, you got your proposed budget, the cuts there, but I ask that you restore those cuts. And part of the problem is when you start cutting, what's going to happen next? Are you going to cut the whole allocation out? That's a problem I have. So once again, tech and these not-for-profits, not just tech, the not-for-profits, they have a large impact on our county. Tech has about a $5 million payroll. These dollars are leaving the community if people get cut. I hope you can understand that. I encourage you to take a tour of tech. Ask questions. Ask Kevin Hess, who's now the CEO. He'll have the answers for you. If he can't answer the questions, he'll find out the questions for you. See where your tax dollars are going. They're going for useful places. Last but not least, I asked you to restore the funding, and I thank you all for your public service. I realize it's not easy. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate the feedback. It's always welcome here. A lot of people don't like to come up here, so appreciate you taking the time to do that and speak for them. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay. I just wanted to thank you for being here. A lot of people don't like to come up here and speak, and I know you speak for other people. I've heard from other people that have similar comments. So thank you for being here this morning.
I appreciate that. And once I didn't say that up there, but I felt like my voice needed to be heard, not just through a letter, which I did, but, and, you know, I have a passion.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
So I thank you for listening to me.
You're welcome. Any comments? And I think maybe one of the things that would help, like the sound here, is if you mute your mic when you're not talking, it might help a little too. But if the commission has any comments, you're welcome to make them. If not, I'll keep moving.
I would make a comment if that's all right. I felt that the cut was too severe for tech. And maybe I see this from a different angle because my first cousin spent a lot of years in tech, and he worked at tech. He just wasn't living there. He was not only living there, he was working there with jobs provided by businesses within the county. Many things that they did there. And while I had about a $10,000 cut, I felt that $100,000 plus was too drastic a cut at the time. And so that's my feelings, and I do believe in those. So that's just, I think it's all right. We need to look at these things, but let's give some time for those different agencies to look at opportunities outside of tax money too, and give them time to be able to do that. So that's my thoughts.
Anything else? Well, you know, I don't think it's too late to change budget items like this.
You wouldn't be able to put the money back into it. It's its own fund. You would have to take from the general fund. You wouldn't change the actual budget. You would just take away from something that's budgeted in the general fund.
So Commissioner Hurst, if you feel strongly, you're welcome to, make a motion, or we can put something on the agenda, so. I think that, is there anyone else here for public comment? Hearing none, are there any additions or revisions to the agenda? Just, I know the thing we talked about, anything else? Okay.
I'd like to pull out 6I and have discussion on that. The department head is here in preparation for that.
Is the commission agreeable to that? Pulling out 6I? Yeah. Okay. We'll pull out 6I. And just if the commission could be flexible, I know we have both the sheriff and the district attorney as business items. Both of them are attending to urgent matters, and so we may have to move the items around because they're definitely not here yet. So we'll probably defer 7A until the sheriff's here, and then I believe one of the executive sessions involves the DA. Yeah, okay. Okay, the consent agenda, why don't we, if there's no objection, go ahead and talk about 6I ahead of that and just get that off the consent agenda. Commissioner Weitzel, do you have some questions? And if Randy Regier, if you don't mind coming to the podium for these questions, appreciate it.
Well, and I'd sent you some questions ahead of time, and just to get the answers on the record. So in the policy, we consider diversions and expungements in hiring decisions, and I don't know. I guess I didn't really like that because in my mind, expungements and diversions are things to get things off people's record, not I guess so. I never really liked it when they were considered for things. I don't like that we or that if somebody gets a diversion for a DUI, it still hits their insurance. So that's kind of a long-standing deal I've got. But if you wanted to address that.
Sure, Randy Regier, Director of Community Corrections. So that's not a matter we have any control over at all. This is set by the Kansas Criminal Justice Information. It's set by the KBI, the Highway Patrol, and the FBI. So this is not even a negotiable thing for us. If somebody wants to work for us, they have to pass criminal background checks to have access to criminal justice information. So if they even have an arrest, we have to get approval from the Highway Patrol before they can have access to any criminal justice information. So it's a matter that's we're required to have in policy. It's an item that we have no jurisdiction over to make a decision on it. It's something that somebody else has to make a decision on.
Okay. And then in section 3A4, says the director or designee will page the building, and I think you were wanting to make a change to that.
Sure, we'll change that. I'll include that it'll be director or designee or supervisors, and that instead of a page, we will notify staff to make it more of a more general term, so that we have multiple options for notifying people within the building.
Okay. And then describe the process of entering a dwelling. Like if you go to somebody's home, and what all is involved with that?
Sure. So to maybe set a bigger framework, when someone's convicted of a felony, they lose certain rights. As part of probation, the Supreme Court has upheld that with reasonable suspicion. So it's a lower bar. So typically we think about probable cause for some of those things. Well, reasonable suspicion is a lower bar. And again, we have an attorney here who can explain this better than I, quite honestly. But it's a much lower bar for a probation violation. So something as so even law enforcement, part of their conditions of supervision are that we can search with reasonable suspicion, and that law enforcement can search with reasonable suspicion without their consent, and that's been upheld by the Supreme Court. So it's a lower bar of proof needed to look inside a house. So typically a couple of things. We routinely do home visits on clients. Those are not for the purpose of search. Those are for the purpose of a much wider range. Maybe we're just visiting the house. We want to talk to family members. We want to talk to them. We want to see where they live. So there's a much broader range. That is not at all a search. That's just, as it kind of implies, more of a visit, like just a face-to-face contact. If it's more specific that we're going to the residence for the purposes to search the residence, we're going to get law enforcement involved. And so we'll take a few more of those steps, but that's going to be based on reasonable suspicion. So that can be positive drug tests. That could be information we receive from other community members or other people, law enforcement, that indicates that illegal activity is going on in that residence, and that would be the time that we would search. And then beyond that, for anything to actually happen off of that, it's going to have to go through the district attorney's office. So we're going to have attorneys involved at that level before it's actually any action is taken as far as a revocation of their probation or any new criminal charges. But again, a lot of that comes back down to some Supreme Court rulings.
Okay. And I guess my concern is, let's say somebody puts my address as their residence, and you guys show up and want to search my house, and I say no. I mean,
sure. What we're looking at is who actually lives there.
Okay.
So if we would go out to a residence and the people there say he doesn't live here, that's not accurate, then we're not going to go in. We would never enter a residence without some level of we couldn't enter a residence when no one's there. So if we came out to the residence, under all reasonable belief, we believe that is the probationer's residence. We still are not going to enter the residence without, we're not going to kick a door in. We're not going to do any of those steps. Anything like that, that's all a law enforcement issue. If we're looking at a new crime, anything like that, that's a place where law enforcement gets involved. That's not a place where we're going to take that action. Law enforcement works under a different set of rules, so that's going to be a different situation there.
okay. And I do also want to say for the record that I really appreciate what you guys do. I'm a
Sure.
real fan of what you guys do, and so I just thought I'd get these on the record. So
No problem. That's great.
So so we're going to make a motion here to accept the consent agenda, but what exactly is the wording of the change that
I can bring that back over. It's very specific to say, let me look at this here. So it says the director or supervisor or designee will notify. That's the change specific in that wording under 3A4.
Okay, is that enough for a motion to reference that, or do I need to?
I think we're on the record, I think it's fine.
Okay.
Well, and I just want to be clear, because I'm not quite tracking what we're changing. If it was a change in the consent agenda or a change requested by Commissioner Weitzel, just want to make sure we're all on the same page. If it's a request from you, I think it needs to go through the commission. Was this initiated by you, Randy, or?
Commissioner Weitzel
Okay.
had sent questions, so we had looked at this earlier this week.
Okay, and so Commissioner Weitzel had some questions. He suggested some changes. Staff is okay with the changes, and so that's what's in here in the consent agenda.
That's what the changes, that's what the consent agenda will mean, but in the packet, it would be the old policy. So there's going to be the word changes that Randy just mentioned.
Okay.
Do you want to scroll to it on the deal so everybody can see?
Yeah, on the page,
It's 6I3A4, or well, the policy is 3A4. No, that's not it.
So when we're talking about this change on the notifying the building, that's policy 6.22.
You have a page number, maybe?
I don't have the same page as you have. I don't have here. 6.22. Yep, that's
Yes,
correct.
that-
And then we're going to go to that 3A4.
And I think
Correct,
And I think,
that's it,
yes.
and it'll be on the you might have to scroll down to the next page to see the, yep, that last sentence. The director or supervisor or designee will notify the building, will be the, correction.
So from page to notify. And
Yes,
my concern was that if we get ourselves into a specific technology, then if we don't page everybody and something happens, then, whereas if we put notify, then they've got different ways to notify people rather than just sending out a page, just to make it more general.
Okay. I don't want to be nitpicky here, but at the same time, I think we should make sure that if this is a change, I think it should go, from you to Randy, and then something should be amended and put back on the agenda and it sounds like kind of there was a different discussion and they made a change that you requested, which is fine. I think we prefer it to go through the process. In this case, you're asking for a change at the meeting, which I think is fine. So if you want to,
Yeah, which is why I wanted to pull it out of the consent agenda.
okay, if you'd like to make a motion to amend the policy and approve it, I think this would be the time.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented by staff with the exception of policy 6. Can you scroll up?
2.2.
6.22, section 3A4, where we changed the word page to notify.
Is there a second? Okay, the motion died for lack of a second. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Or do you have another motion?
Will they make the change though? But regardless of what we do here? Or do we need to?
This could be probably moved to the next meeting.
I'm fine with that.
If you want to see the changes that Commissioner Weitzel is proposing, you can see the alternative and we can put it back on the agenda for the next meeting.
John, are you asking just to put?
Just to change that one word.
In place of page notify?
Yeah.
Well, if it's not too late, I will second that motion.
Okay, I don't, unless there's objection, we'll take the second there. So the motion has been properly supported. Is there any other discussion on the consent agenda as amended? None? Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Hurst,
Yes?
Commissioner Parks,
Yes.
Commissioner Bogner,
Yes.
Commissioner Weitzel,
Yes.
Commissioner Friesen.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thanks. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you.
Okay, if looking at this right, we're on 7 business items. 7A, we're going to defer. Hopefully, Sheriff will get here at some point. 10B, I see the district attorney's here. Do we want to? Is that the only item he's on here for?
Yes.
Okay. Tom, we've got a good hour. Do you have time later, or do you want us to try to squeeze you in now? I mean, I don't want you to just sit here. I think we got a good hour before we're gonna get to you. We could text you when we're about ready. Yeah, you bet. Item 7B is the approval of a workforce development grant. Carl.
Good morning, Commissioners. Carla Nichols, Director of Public Health. So the proposal ahead of or in front of you is for us to apply for a workforce development grant. This is a federal grant that was applied for and received by Kansas Department of Health and Environment. And then KDHE has parsed out little elements for every local health department to apply for this non-competitive grant. A grant, again, just a reminder, nearly half of the state and local public health employees left their organization between 2017 and 2021, creating a critical lack of skills and expertise across the nation. So this grant is an opportunity for counties to rebuild their public health infrastructure, for employees to work on their skills and education. So that's what the purpose of this grant is for. Again, it is not to hire additional staff. It's for us to then fulfill the employee support elements from our strategic plan.
Thank you, Carla. Questions for Carla?
Is there anything specific you're planning on doing with this money?
Is there anything specific you're planning on doing with this money?
Specifically, so it can be used for like our FAB accreditation fees, which is $6,000 a year. And then also we do send a lot of our staff to like the Governor's Public Health Conference. It's going to be used for their travel expenses. So that then lessens the burden on any taxpayer funding. So utilizing this grant will then allow us to decrease that.
Okay, any other commissioners have questions? Commissioner Hurst?
I would move to approve approval for Reno County Health Department to move forward and submit the application for the workforce development.
Sorry. We'll get you trained up soon enough.
Eventually, this old man might learn something, okay? I would move to approve the Reno County Health Department to move forward to submitting an application for the workforce development grant.
Commissioner Hurst makes a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Parks. Any other final discussion? Commissioner Bogner, are you looking like you have something, or you?
No,
Okay.
I'm fine.
All right. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Hurst.
Yes?
Commissioner Parks.
Yes.
Commissioner Bogner.
Yes.
Commissioner Weitzel.
Yes.
Commissioner Friesen.
Yes, motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carl. Item 7C, I think, Randy, you have this, or Patrick?
Patrick will help me on questions, but on April, the commission directed us to go out to a request for proposal.
Oh, sorry, forgot the microphone too. In April, the commission wanted to go out to get requests for proposals for newspaper publications to be the official county newspaper, where the official publications like the budget hearings, legal notices, different things would appear. As we noticed over the past few years, the rates just kept going up without really much notice by the newspaper. That's our current official newspaper. So we received 3 responses, and that's from Nenaskaw Valley News, which is based in Pretty Prairie, the Rural Messenger based in Haven, and the Hutchinson News based here in Hutchinson. The Nenaskaw Valley was the cheapest at $3.70 per column inch, but its circulation is only 360 people, 64% which are in Reno County. So Rural Messenger is $8.50 per column inch, and their circulation is 10,300. The Hutchinson News would be $18.70 per column inch, and we didn't get their circulation numbers. So, wanted to see if the commission wants, there's options. We have select Nenaskaw Valley, select Rural Messenger, or select Hutchinson News. The effective date, I would say, if you're going to change, maybe not August 1st, that's so quick. Maybe we move it back to September 1st. And that's one of the, number 2, the one out of Haven, has put in an application. Their postage or their postal address, I think, is Wichita. It has to be in Reno County. They've applied to put it in Hutchinson and are waiting on the Postal Service to respond, if you go with that option.
Just maybe a couple questions to frame this up. Does the Nenaskaw Valley News, do you have to pay to get the newspaper? Does anybody know? Oh, go ahead. That way the public can hear.
Michael Glenn, in South Hutch, 67505. The three main newspapers, so Nenasko Valley News costs 40 cents at a newsstand in Pretty Prairie. I'm unaware of the delivery, but Rural Messenger is free, and the Hutchinson News costs $2 per paper, $4.50 on Sundays, and I think a $30 a month subscription fee. But that's all I know about that.
Thanks. Yeah, it sounds like there's really no requirement, and in fact, the Hutch News you have to pay for. We know that. And
All three of these newspapers, I believe, qualify based on the statute.
The statute just requires general circulation, and mainly what the statute doesn't want it to be a trade journal or something that's not just a general circulation newspaper. It doesn't require paid circulation. It doesn't require the commissioners to take the highest circulation. It has some other requirements, such as being published in the county, which all three of these are published in the county, doing a paper at least 50 times a year, which all three do, and then using the post office in the county, which, like I said, like Randy said, Rural Messenger is in the process of changing to Reno County if they were selected.
And
so
one more question to help frame this up for everybody. Did we go out for bid for this? Is it an official bid process, or we just RFP?
We did RFP, and I think the reason was we wanted more information than just the bid. So we did get we did get information of how much the costs were, but we also wanted circulation numbers and just some details about them in addition to just the bid.
And then if the commission wanted to, if the commission saw like circulation numbers as an important part, could the commission go back, let's just say, for example, go back to Rural Messenger and say, hey, there's a lower bidder here, but we like your circulation. If you could match that, we would go with you. Is that permitted under this process that we're in?
Yes.
Okay.
And the way the statute reads, the county can really change your designated newspaper whenever you feel like you need to. So it's very flexible in terms of that compared to some of the statutes.
Okay.
But yeah.
Commissioner Bogner pushed his button.
Yeah, I'm learning. The Hutch News did not provide circulation, and that would mean something to me, because the reason these things are having to be circulated is for the public's notification. And I haven't talked to anybody lately that's still got a subscription to the Hutch News, and we're talking about that as being one of the priorities. I think they should have provided that information to us to be on equal terms with the other two papers.
Commissioner Weitzel.
Yeah, and so I'd sent an email to staff on this. So Representative Stewart's been in Reno County has been working on getting rid of the requirement to publish in local newspapers, and it's hit some roadblocks in the House. But my idea was, why don't we pick the lowest cost newspaper and then also start putting legal notices on the website the way that he proposed, and we can kind of do that as a trial run, maybe give him some ammunition in Topeka to bring this up, say, hey, in my county they're doing this, and and then we would kind of be able to see too how it worked with people. Just on the front page of the website was my idea. Just put legal notices, and then people can click on that. And I believe that was something you said that would be fairly easy to implement.
It's always dangerous for me to say it's easy to implement, because I won't have any part in implementing that. But we do have county staff that deal with the website quite a bit, and I'm sure they can add that. And a lot of cities are going to more of that system, and there's a lot of interest in changing the publication requirements for statewide.
Commissioner Parks.
Just a question, of those three, how many are online publication as well? Does the messenger do that? Or,
The messenger has a person here if she wants to talk about that, because I don't know the answer.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Anita Stuckey, and I'm one of the owners of the Rural Messenger, so I'm here to answer any questions you might have. Yes, we do have an online presence, and if you do print, you automatically get digital. We don't charge you extra for that. We have over 8,200 digital readers that goes out weekly, that they requested it every week, so we send that out as well. So you get both that plus the printed copy, the 10,000.
Just a question, since you're here, could you match the Nenasko Valley's rate?
I can ask, and I'll check with Kansas Press. I know that one of the rules is that you have to use your lowest published rate. So that would be a lot lower than our lowest published rate, but we would certainly entertain that, yeah. I do know what the distribution of the Hutch News is, but I feel kind of a little uncomfortable saying that. So I'd probably prefer not to, but you're getting more than double with us. I can tell you that.
that's kind of what I
I
was
did bring
feeling
a
like
paper
that.
today if you want to look at it for this week's edition. I can leave it here if you guys would like to look through it. It does have some public notices, budget hearings in this week's papers.
Well, I kind of like Commissioner Bogner feel like that they probably have more contact through that messenger than you do the Hutch News anymore. I personally never look at the Hutch News anymore, quite honestly, and I know there's a lot of people I know that don't. So, and I understand going with the cheapest venue, but we still have to try to contact people in the best way that we can, and still going to save us some money if we went with the middle bid as well. So that's just kind of my piece, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, Reno County and the surrounding 6 counties is basically our core. So, you know, the Hutch News does print our paper, so I am there quite often and familiar with the press room, so that's how I happen to know the numbers.
Any other questions? If none, we could entertain a motion.
Well, I read the Rural Messenger, Anita, as you know, I've advertised there before,
Oh, yeah.
and not often, but
I've talked to you a
not
few
dry
times.
weather when we don't have any hay anyway. But and I will say, I am going to miss Roger Ringer column.
Yes, we are too, very much.
I also keep up to date with the Nenasko Valley News. I think they are locally owned. I'm not sure about real much. I do know that Commissioner Weitzel brought up a very good point that Representative Sywert has tried 4 times, and there's 1 or 2 lobbyists, and there's only about, of the public, what I call public newspapers like Hutch News, Garden City Paper, others, they're owned by about 3 or 4 major companies that are all located in the East Coast or somewhere else. And I think we need to patronize local as much as possible. And while I do like the Rural Messenger very well, and it has a broad-based people that read their newspaper, the Rural Messenger, in looking at, as we were all looking at cost, I would like to see us try the Nenasko Valley News, as Commissioner Weitzel said, and put it also on the website. And that seems to be where everything is going today. So that's my thought. I know the circulation's low compared to the Rural Messenger as well as the Hutch News, but that's where I'm leaning right now, is to do the local, more local, not just, I know the Rural Messenger's based out of Haven, has been an excellent, it's kept on being excellent after Mike passed away, and it's got opportunity, but dollar-wise, I have to look at that a little bit.
Commissioner Bogner?
You said you're an owner?
Yes, I live here in Hutchinson, and
That's what I figured,
yeah.
from what I knew of the paper. they are local owners there.
They are.
Yes.
And
Thank you.
unfortunately, we've got to decide how do I want to state this? Sometimes cheapest isn't best. The circulation deal kind of catches me a little funny. But that's up for this board to decide when it comes time. So with that, that's my comment.
Seems like we're coming up to a potential split here. Not too big a split. Commissioner Parks, do you have a particular position?
Not really. I like the ability to be online. There's a whole lot of the older residents I realize probably don't use this. We run into that and other issues where they're not notified. The burn permit was one of them here a while back where we're still struggle a little bit for people to see that. So you'll never reach everybody 100% no matter what you pick here or what you do. Some are just not going to read. And although I agree with going local as much as we can, there's a whole lot of other vendors that are local and the county benefits from that are their holders are not from Reno County. And so I don't know that, you know, but I feel as though we need to hit as much circulation as we can for the dollars. That's the reason I think we started this, because the cost had elevated so high. We wanted to save some money, and so I mean I am kind of leaning towards the messenger. I'd love to help a smaller paper, but I think the circulation is still somewhat important for now. Another 5 years from now, maybe not so much. Everything's probably all going to be aligned. Some of that'll have faded out, but I think there's still certain people we need to hit with Brent.
So then, do we want to give her an option to come back with a different price then,
Well,
before we vote, or?
Let me ask a question. It sounds like your concern is maybe less of whether you give us this rate, it's more of like whether you have to give other people the rate too. Is that what your concern is?
No, not necessarily, because you can set your legal rate separately.
Okay.
We just have to, for us as a newspaper, I just need to give that to the Kansas Press Association so that they have it as well. So.
Well, let me try to bring us together here with a motion. 'Cause it sounds like there is some interest in circulation. The motion would be to authorize a change in our official newspaper to the Rural Messenger at a rate of $3.70 per column inch, which was the lowest bid. And they can come back and say whether they want to do that or not. In addition to that motion is to direct staff for all future public notices to place it on a conspicuous spot on our website for the public to view, as well as provide a press release of some sort to the press on that. And those efforts would be to prove to the state that that's a more efficient way to do business nowadays. Is there a second to that motion?
I'd second.
Second by Commissioner Bogner. Discussion?
I realize this was an RFP rather than a bid, but to me, it's about the same thing as to me. And so, I like, either way, I don't think we miss a beat, either way. But
Is your concern offering the contract to the bidder that wasn't the lowest?
that's one of them, yeah.
And I think the justification there is that there's a pretty substantial difference in circulation. It seems like at least half the commission finds that to be valuable.
I understand that. I do, but South Hutchinson uses the Nenasko Valley News also.
Okay.
And they don't have it on the website, as far as I know. And I think by putting it on the website, along with the opportunity at price difference of $4.80 per column inch, that's a factor for me.
Well, Commissioner Parks? Comment?
Well, the motion was to, if we would accept this, was for Anita to go back and see if she can match that rate, correct? Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, I would match it. I just need to ask the other two owners to make sure they're okay with it as well too. So.
I understand the circulation thing, Randy, Commissioner Forbes.
I understand.
Any other comments for the vote?
You know, I think at the same time, maybe we ought to ask Nensaw Valley News if they would provide some papers at the both the courthouse and the annex for people to have availability.
I'm not married to this motion. I'm just trying to move it across the finish line. I think there's a votes to get it through, but it, you know, if you guys feel strongly the other way.
I just think the emphasis needs to be on digital wherever we go with the paper.
I think this motion encompasses that for sure. And I agree with that.
It does kind of suck for the Nensaw Valley that they came in with a lower bid and we're, you know, saying, well, hey, we're going to take your work and we're going to give it to somebody else. But I mean, I can see how that would be frustrating for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a factor of like, I don't know, 30 here on the circulation difference.
And that's why I suggested maybe we inquire with Nensaw Valley News if they would provide a certain number of papers at the courthouse as well as at the annex, so they'd be available.
Okay, well,
we're going to have to. That's something we can do as well too, because then we just print them right here, so it's no big deal for a driver to.
And I know you do the same thing.
I mean, and to Rural Messages' credit, they showed up today. We're going to have to split the baby here. So there's a motion on the table. Any other comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Was there a second?
Yeah.
Commissioner
Bogner.
Bogner, yeah.
Commissioner Hurst,
No.
Commissioner Parks,
Yes.
Commissioner Bogner,
Yes.
Commissioner Weitzel,
Yes.
Commissioner Friesen.
Yes, motion passes 4-1.
I have no problem with it. It's just, that's my feelings.
Yeah, maybe we should make, just to kind of bring this to conclusion, if they don't accept the low rate, would the intent be to award it to the Nensaw paper?
I think we ought to bring it back for discussion.
It doesn't matter. I'd prefer to just get it done.
Okay.
I heard him. Are you okay with just awarding it?
Yeah, whomever the lower bid is, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'd make a second motion just to get this thing off the table. That if the low bid rate isn't accepted by the rural messenger, that the award be given to Nensaw Valley News. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Weitzel. Any discussion? We're going to do voice votes. It's just all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Okay. Thank you for everyone. The work. Thank you to the staff for like working to save the county money and like proving to the state that, you know, we're going to get this done either way. So appreciate that. Good work.
I think that resolution will show up in a consent agenda in the future, and we'll identify the paper, and that way everyone it'll be clear what happened.
Yep.
Thanks, Anita.
Perfect sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
If unless there's objection, we'll move back to 7A because I see the sheriff's here. Sheriff, are you ready? You just showed up. You need some time to prepare. Okay.
I'm just gonna wing it anyway.
Okay. You're a man after my own heart there. So we're on 7A, shooting range costs moving forward with phase 1.
A few copies of this, just so you have an analog copy. They probably got digital copies from the.
Thank you.
Trust everyone's well.
I'm sorry?
Everyone well?
Yeah, everybody's good, everything's good. Everything is resolved, everyone's safe. So basically, I know we've had some discussions individually and as a group. One of the things that we discussed when we had the city council and the commission came together for a joint meeting, one of the goals was to walk away in trying to figure out what the city of Hutch plans on doing, so we're not duplicating resources when we talk about and go into moving forward with this range project, this training facility and everything. I wasn't able to achieve that. I don't know what you all took away, but I didn't take away an answer. I know they still have some issues that they're dealing with in the selection process for a new head of their agency over there that they're going through. I went over yesterday and was visiting, and again, I wasn't able, nobody's in that seat yet permanently, so I couldn't get an answer. However, we're at a point in our project that we would like to move forward. We just need some guidance from the board on how you all want to move forward and where that funding is going to come from, how we want to use it or get it. So what I handed you was the entire project, pretty much that is broke down into phases, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is on top, that kind of lists out, this is from Hutton, kind of the explanation of what they're expecting. There's still some stuff that we've been collaborating with other departments throughout the county, Public Works and the solid waste out there. They've been phenomenal to work with and have been providing a ton of help. That's great. It also saves taxpayers some money when it comes to that. The berm is done, the main berm, it's still in the process of being sculpted. However, getting an idea of how we need to move forward with this phase 1. I know we spoke individually in my office at one point, and I think most were in agreement, or if not all, that it would benefit everybody to move forward in this capacity.
Maybe we could frame up budget, in budget, out of budget.
For phase 1, the $500,000 to $600,000, whatever the total amount ends up being, I would recommend it coming out of the capital reserve fund. So we kind of built up, we have a little bit of cushion there. Don't want to use it all.
How much is in there?
Projects, but that would be whatnot.
How much is in there?
It's a little over $4 million, but right now the courthouse renovation has been paid out of it also.
So how much do we have kind of encumbered out of that $4 million?
Probably $2 million.
Okay. Questions from the commission? The sheriff?
I don't. You're still sharing a shooting range currently.
We are actually utilizing the Department of Corrections shooting range, and that's what we've been using since we were brought the lock off our old range.
Yeah. Well, I understood from you last time we talked that you're sharing that and that you're not getting your officers rotated through on a frequent enough basis to get to the shooting range.
A lot of the training that we was privy to when we had our own facility
Right.
and was able to keep up on some key skills has absolutely has fallen behind. But we're maintaining.
Well, that's okay, but that's concerning to me.
Yes,
so
sir.
I want to see you go forward with this.
Mr. Weitzel?
Well, and I know we had talked about the radio money funding that we give you. If you are able to get a grant that that would free up that money for the range. We'd also talked about some potential savings with the prison, and the Attorney General had said he had sent an email to the people involved. Have we heard anything back from anybody on that?
You talk about the congressional spending program?
No. The we had when we were talking about the budget, we had talked about potentially reducing jail costs, and for people that that's not going to affect public safety, but people that are locked up that maybe aren't really a threat. And you said that was out of your hands, that was the
So there has been some email movement since we last spoke. And what I currently have is I have an employee that's actually putting together a spreadsheet to discuss some of those issues. I've been talking with Mr. Stanton, however, he's preparing for a jury trial. So to bring everybody to the table, we're looking at pushing it to about August 14th. It looks like the jury trial will be over, and some people will be freed up to come together and discuss some of those things. I know I've been in talks with Randy over the new Senate Bill 228 that was passed on the state funding the mental health people that are still waiting. I can't think of the word. Basically, KDADS pays agencies that are housing people that are waiting mental health restoration to stand trial. Once the judge gives the order, the state owes us $100 a day, and that's retro back to July 1, 2022. Preliminary talks on that first invoice that we're going to send to the state is approximately right now it's told around close to 100,000. So. And then we'll start billing them on a quarterly basis. And of course, that'll just go in the general fund as well. So there's some revenue that will be there. In the talks that you're talking about, you know, we're putting together some numbers and trying to figure out. I'm frustrated in the same respect because there are some people that have been sitting there for a very long time that I feel should have moved forward in some way or fashion, but. With the waiver status docket or status docket, it continues to kick the can down the street. You know, I have one gentleman that it's been over a year since he's been to court. His case has been heard, but it's just been continued. Again, in some respect, let's say he's a court-appointed attorney. I don't know how they get paid. Do they get paid more if they kick the can down the street and drag it out? I don't know. But we're tying up court systems. That's paid by the county. It's paid by the taxpayers. There's a lot of stuff, you know.
Right.
Continual housing. What if the medical bills? Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that's affected by someone continuing to be in that facility.
What's he in for? What's he charged with?
I think it was aggravated battery.
Okay. And what's the typical sentence for something like that?
Oh, I can't tell you that. But if it does get sentenced, you know, he'd be sentenced to DOC. He would just sit in our facility until we get a journal entry made, that the courts and everything is done, and then he goes to DOC.
So, but he's been incarcerated for a year without a judgment. So he's innocent right now.
Yeah, and that's just well, there's some sort of probable cause that's being held.
Right. I'm not saying he's. I'm just saying in our system, he's innocent until proven guilty, and he hasn't been proven guilty at this point.
Right.
By the court.
Right.
Okay.
However,
you believe. I understand you believe he's guilty. That's why you put him there, right?
Right. There's a reason why he's arrested.
Right.
Absolutely. Also, when it comes to setting a bond or his release, the judges have to take into account several different things at a minimum. You know, their ability to flee justice, abscond, if he's released, the threat to society if he's released, and the public, and there's several other things that are taken into account in that.
I think we've kind of departed the agenda item, but
well, no, I guess I'll get to my point. My point was any savings we get there at the jail, I think we should put into the gun range. And so, I mean, that would give everybody involved an incentive to, and we're not talking about people that would be a threat to the public, but just like, during COVID when we released a bunch of people because it wasn't necessary that they be held and there was no impact on public safety. I think we ought to look at that model as a permanent deal. And then, if we can free up, even $500,000, that'd pay for phase one. And if we can do that annually, then, you can get the shooting range you really wanted.
No, I got that. And to tell you the truth, if there is a committee that's going to meet, if we're going to meet together, a committee or these people involved in the system, if one of you would love to sit in on that, and that'd be great because some of you are already set in on some committees.
I think one of us should be there, and I think it's going to take a little pushing to change. I mean, obviously, I think everybody admits there's a problem. It's just we don't seem to know the solution, and so appreciate you taking the initiative to get things rolling, or the DA or whoever that was. But regarding the shooting range, was that your comments?
Yeah, that was my comments. Is the money's there if we can get movement on that and figure out a way to save money there.
And just to clarify, I guess the radio purchases would come out of the same fund?
The radio purchases are budgeted in the general fund for next year. If the sheriff gets the congressional spending, then that money sitting in the capital line item in the sheriff's budget that could then go toward shooting range improvements.
Okay.
I had hoped to have heard something by now. Of course, yeah.
Right.
I can reach out and find out some movement on that.
You're waiting for money. They're giving it away. There's two different priorities there.
Yeah, they actually, the process to elect and get voted on, I guess, by Congress doesn't happen till September, October.
Right.
As we look at both phase 1 and phase 2, especially phase 2, we've had discussions with the commission before and the administration with regard to the emergency management needs coming up in the future. I would hope that we would look at the fact that emergency management, if they need a place, could look out at this facility, whether we have to add another 200 square feet to it or not, to allow for that. I would hope that would be one issue to look at, to see if that facility couldn't also accommodate emergency management. I know it's not right here, it's a couple miles away, 3-4 miles away, but nonetheless, we've seen that facility over at El Dorado, and I think it was El Dorado, wasn't it? And so I would like to also look at that possibility, or at least think about that idea of housing emergency management at the same location, to provide, since there's about 2,000 square foot of learning space in this building, that might be included. I can think of a couple other little items. I'd plant buffalo grass and I wouldn't irrigate it, so I'd take that out of the exclusion.
Well, again, with this spending program, what I was told when I initially applied for it, for the whole project, they advised that any technology I wanted to put in that building, they would support, or I could apply for, and they would push it forward if it applied. So that is another aspect. You know, once we get something in place, still going outside this to look for how can we facilitate or fill this with that. There's also a project, a software upgrade project that next year I'll be applying for the jail itself that we looked at. We've been working with the IT that will hopefully save the county a lot of money if it gets approved. Again, it's the technology out there that's failing, and that we need to look at also.
Commissioner Parks.
Yes. Again, I think we're off track a little bit. We're talking about a shooting range and finishing the Burham today and kind of getting the cart before the horse. I agree there's a lot of great ideas, and I don't mean to speak out of turn here, but I think we ought to stick to the issue at hand, whether we want to approve or not the going forward of the shooting range. And I think it's critically important for the safety of Reno County that the officers stay trained and that we move forward with this project. A lot of great ideas for the future, but it's got to start somewhere, and it starts right here. So I'm going to make a motion that we accept the moving forward of taking the capital improvement funds and funding to finish the shooting range in phase 1 as presented.
Commissioner Parks makes a motion to approve the funding request for phase one. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Go ahead.
I think Commissioner Bogner beat you by a millisecond. So Commissioner Bogner seconds. Any comment on the motion?
Sure. Well, and my comments weren't meant to get us off track. My comments were to say that, you know, if we tie the funding to that, then I think we're more likely to get a result quicker on some other things, and also save the county money, and then potentially get you a much better shooting range in the long run. So that was my comments there. That was why I went down that rabbit hole. So
Worthy goal.
I think everybody wins if we can solve that problem.
Hearing no further comments on the motion, roll call, please.
Commissioner Hurst?
Yes.
Commissioner Parks?
Yes.
Commissioner Bogner?
Yes.
Commissioner Weitzel?
Yes.
Commissioner, excuse me, Commissioner Friesen?
Yes. Motion passed 5-0. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Commissioners, one other thing on this is for phase two. Is this something you want to just kind of push aside for now and wait until we're done with phase one and come back with the phase two discussion? Or do you want to set a maximum amount for us to look at to finance, to possibly finance? Of course, before any construction or any award would go out, it'd come back before the commission and we could look at financing options. But right now, if it's between phase two shows 1.1 to 1.2, and then budget for tower concrete, and then some of the things that aren't included. So if it's a $1.5 million project for phase two, is the commission good with us looking at financing options, or wait until we're done with phase one before we go down that path?
I mean, I personally would like to wait and see if we can get anything done on this jail thing, and if we can get some money savings there, then we just move that money, is kind of my thought. I mean, I think that gives everybody on board an incentive to solve the problem that everybody knows is there.
Are they kind of connected at the hip, or is you do one and you can do
phase one and phase two?
Yeah.
You want to explain?
So the phase two portion is actually the facility. Usually, like when we hold classes or something, and we'll go out, do some practical shooting, that type of stuff, come back in, discuss, go through the classroom, that type of stuff. So that's how it's facilitated. You know, right now we're looking at possibly doing some of that off-site, then coming out there and doing those exercises. So,
But it's workable until we get it built.
I think so.
What's your time frame on finishing phase one? Have any ideas?
I can't. I know that I think Hutton mentioned that we're months out. If I was to call in today and say, hey, phase one's been approved, when can you get started? I would have to touch base with them, but I'm thinking it's probably a couple months because they have some projects.
Before he starts, and then time after that.
Yes.
To get it completed. So.
Yeah, and you know, concrete and the awning. I mean, I start a project, say I could have this done in the afternoon.
Yeah,
3 days later, I'm going.
Yeah, I get it. So I don't think time frame wise it would be out of the question even for Randy to look for financing, and even if we don't accept that, to start researching now, because we could be 6 months out or 2 years.
Yeah.
Hopefully not a year, but it could happen.
We're looking at phase one, we're gonna be looking at phase two. I think it's only imperative that we look at long-term financing so you can budget properly.
It sounds like there's consensus to, I mean, you can continue to do your diligence, Randy. I do like Commissioner Weitzel's point of like keeping the fire on a little bit on, you know, just incentivizing some conversations and rewarding those conversations. So I think we can do both. So. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Don's been waiting here patiently. We can move to 7E. I think that's why you're here, right? Okay. Do you want to brief us quickly on it?
Yeah, Don Britton, Director of Reno County Public Works. There's a petition to vacate a portion of 95th Avenue between Riverton Road and the new K-14. And that's what this is about. The state went ahead and went in there and eradicated that road already. And so I guess the corn's about ready to cut on it. But officially, the Board of County Commissioners need to vacate that. We need to have a public hearing and all that to officially get this vacated. The state shouldn't have done what they did outside of their road right of way, but they did. So this is just to make it legal and for record.
So we're correcting a state mistake.
Well, the state eradicated it, and the farmer assumed he could go ahead and plant it, which he did. And so now the same owner owns the land on both sides, and we need to legally vacate that road because as he planted the corn, and people being what they are, they went ahead and drove on it. So that was the deal. So we need to vacate it.
So the owner is wanting it closed.
The owner's the one that petitioned for it to be vacated.
Okay, because
And the owner owns it on both sides of the road.
I can see his point. Because that road really goes to nowhere now.
That's true.
It's been dead-ended for,
It's
well,
dead-ended because of the new highway.
yeah.
They own that full half mile.
Yes, they own the land on both sides.
Is there a motion?
Commissioners?
Yeah.
So what we're looking for to set up the viewing is to identify which three of you want to be the viewers or are willing to be the viewers. And then we are looking for a date to actually go out and physically view it, which will need to be the first week in September so that we can do our publication process. And then the hearing date will be the first meeting in September at your regular commission meeting.
Do we have to go view it, somebody, if they've already viewed it? I went with the city officials of Nickerson and viewed it here a while back.
The statute for doing, the fence viewing, the road closure statute, sorry, not fence viewing, road closure, it has a viewing date on it, which we
Okay.
have to set. So
Okay.
I do think sometimes, yeah. So that's the reason why we have to do it.
3 commissioners don't have to view it, but 3.
3 people have to do it. It's an old statute, but that's the process.
So 3 people. 3 people we appoint.
3 county residents, if you don't want to do it, yeah. Just
Okay.
three persons have to go out and do it.
How, is there any commissioner that wants to go out there?
Somebody lived close that could drop by that day.
Is that your district?
That's my district. I could go if you set the time. I don't mind being there.
How about we do this? How about we appoint Commissioner Parks, Randy Partington, and Don Britton as the 3?
Who's buying lunch?
First off, I'd move to vacate.
Well, we're asking for a resolution that has holes in it, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
you're not ripe. It's not ripe to be vacated. That will happen
Okay.
that motion will be made at the
Okay,
first meeting. in September.
so keep us down there in the blanks. So we've got the 3 on number 2, and then a time. Do you guys have a time that works for you? Or do you want to propose something?
I will be gone from Tuesday until the following, next Wednesday until the following Tuesday.
Like in September, around Labor Day or?
Oh, I thought you were doing it right away. No, in September
We
we're
have to
good.
publish the date.
Yeah, no, we're
and
good.
So we have to give time for the public.
I got you.
Okay, what date?
So Tuesday, September 5th.
Good. What time? 9 a.m.? 8 a.m.? 8:30?
6 a.m.
What do you think, Don?
It's whatever either one of the 2 Randys want.
Well, you say your schedule.
I'll go with you, Randy.
That's fine.
Okay, let's be there at 8:30.
8:30.
8:30?
Thank you.
We meeting here?
No, on site.
On site,
And
okay.
where you want to meet? Is it road
At
intersection?
Riverton Road and 95th.
Okay, Riverton and 95th. Is that all the blanks?
And the hearing date, the last blank, which I would recommend September 13th at 9 a.m. because that's your next that's the regularly scheduled commission date.
Cindy, you got all that? Okay,
So is it 5th or 13th?
13th, I believe.
13th is the public hearing.
Yeah.
What you're saying.
5th,
So
13th.
we're meeting at the 5th.
5th is the viewing, 13th is the public hearing, just to be here for paperwork that day.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and move to approve resolution 2023-18 as documented here today. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Hurst. Roll call, please. Unless there's discussion. I didn't think there would. I'm not hearing any. Okay, roll call.
Okay. Commissioner Hurst?
Yes.
Commissioner Parks?
Yes.
Commissioner Bogner?
Yes.
Commissioner Weitzel?
Yes.
Commissioner Friesen?
Yes. Motion passed 5-0.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Tom. Okay, Mounts and Back 7D.
This is for first floor furniture of the courthouse renovations, some of the new office spaces and expansion that we have with offices and needs. The county staff talked with Midwest Single Source, which used to be Robert Touchline, and they sell Han, which has a state contract to where we get a pretty good discount, which is why we didn't put it out for bid, is because it is a state contract out. So it qualifies for going straight with them. The amount that I'm recommending and asking for approval is for $48,615.33. And this includes furniture that would take care of human resources, county administration, and information technology, some areas, computer lab on the main floor. Wanted to see if there's any questions, because last time when we did the IT on the mezzanine, we kind of rushed it through, and I just asked for consensus. This time we want it in the actual meeting to get formal approval. And this will come back up again probably in a few months for the district attorney. So the 5th floor and anything on the 3rd and 4th that may be needed will come at a later date. And that one will probably be a higher amount than the IT and the administration one.
I understand the furniture includes divider walls and things like that
It has some, yes.
for the individual offices.
In some areas, yeah, but there's the open area of the first floor that won't have really dividers other than a small area where the human resources are. We're moving the cabinet a little bit closer to the wall as you work with the sign that says human resources, and then moving the cubicle there and kind of isolate it a little bit more closer to the entrances of the offices. But the main open area won't have dividers in it.
Mr. Parks.
Having been someone that was somewhat against doing this whole phase of remodeling in its entirety to begin with, in the future, I would request that these are included in the total overall bid, because if you're creating a space, because I've designed spaces before and did major remodeling projects and building projects like that, and we included those in the initial cost so that there's not I think people would feel like this is a hidden cost that showed up they should have known about up front. And I realize things change a little bit. I get that, because you may get to that point and say that really won't work, and I understand that happens. That's real life. Is that something we can make sure is included in the future? Because we could be talking several $100,000 more on top of this project with these kinds of things. And we voted for one thing. Now we're adding these in there, and it wasn't out there in front. And so we can do that in the future. It would be great.
Yeah, I had mentioned it to the commission that this was going to be coming up. In the future, we may not put it with the contract, because we then would pay an extra fee for contractors to go through this, but we could have it as a bid that's tied to it, if that makes sense. Kind of
Yeah, I'd love to
a
see it
separate
with
bid.
that remodeling bid or construction to see that expense.
Yeah.
I could be fuzzy on this, but I thought in the total expenditure, you had both the contracted services and the furniture, and the furniture wasn't in there.
Furniture wasn't in there.
I think as we looked over that contract, we knew that the furniture was not in that bid at the time because there were some changes to be made, and that depended upon, those changes depended upon the furniture use and needs at that time.
Is there a motion, questions?
Yeah, and so just for clarification, since I voted against the original project, I feel obligated to vote against an addition of furniture as well. So
I'll move to approve authorize the county administrator to complete the order with Midwest Single Source in the amount of $48,615.33 for furniture required for the renovation portion of the courthouse first floor.
Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Bogner. Discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna qualify my comments on that. I understand having voted against, and wasn't against the remodel in its entirety. I mean, some of it I think was necessary, but this is one of those things I have discussed with Randy, and so I feel confident that we do need these things. There's just some furnishings that will not work in the new areas. I understand that, because I've been through, like I said, a lot of these projects in my lifetime, so I understand what he's up against. So I'll just state I have no problem with going forward with it. But I'd just like to see it a little different in the future, so everybody would know up front what the real costs are. So.
Anything else? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Hurst?
Yes.
Commissioner Parks?
Yes.
Commissioner Bogner?
Yes.
Commissioner Weitzel?
no.
Commissioner Friesen?
Yes, motion passes 4-1. Randy?
Okay. Monthly department reports. Pull that up. In the packet is emergency management, health, human resources, IT, public works, solid waste, treasurer, and youth services. When I was reading through these, I didn't see anything that stood out really in particular. Didn't know if you had any questions on anything, on any departments or any comments made by the departments.
So I had emailed some questions to you, and so I thought I would get these on the record. So it looks like there were visits by the health department to Wisconsin and Georgia, and you said that both of these were paid for by grants with no other cost to the taxpayers. And there's also a chamber luncheon on the 15th. These luncheons are, a good cost to sponsor, and I was told that this was also coming out of a grant with no cost to the county taxpayers. So I thought I would put that on there because those were some questions that I had. And then that public article, honestly, and I sent this to you as well, it wasn't peer reviewed. It was, I mean, I don't know, it was a garbage article. And if I were still teaching and somebody came to me with an article like that, it was just a garbage article with no science to back it up. And so I thought I would go on record saying that I don't appreciate the health department publishing something that without a white paper, without research to back it up, and that wasn't peer reviewed.
Commissioner Weitzel, I didn't follow where that came from.
So there was an article that was published in, I don't remember where it was published, but saying basically that during the pandemic, NPI contributed to there not being flu and RSV cases, but this paper wasn't peer reviewed. There was no white paper available, which means, the methodology, the reasoning stuff is not public. And so she just said, hey, basically, hey, this happened and this is the reason why, with no supporting data.
Is this, sorry,
I have it pulled. This is the paper that he's talking about.
Yeah, and
it's written by
I
the
don't know.
county health department.
Yes.
Yeah, and to remind people, during the pandemic, there were no flu cases. Like, the flu just disappeared. So I don't know if COVID just eliminated the flu, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't, because people were wearing masks and staying at a spitting distance.
Is this common for the health department to write papers?
I guess Carla walked in at a perfect time. We're talking about the epidemiologist and the paper. Is it common for publications to come from your staff?
It is atypical. After, I know there were several comments after COVID as far as non-pharmaceutical interventions. So I know that there was several comments out in the community as far as lack of studies. So I did challenge Megan about the information we were hearing from the community. And so then she did work with KDHE and our data analyst to then, and with the state to then compile this information. So it is an honor and should be an amazing honor for Reno County to have our epidemiologist to be published like this. She was recognized by the state as something that they will look for also. So.
What was the conclusion of the article?
That non-pharmaceutical interventions did play a part in lessening the severity and duration. So there's your conclusion. That we did experience a reduction in both RSV and influenza when NPIs, which is non-pharmaceutical interventions, were heavily enforced and utilized in beginning of the pandemic. Once these NPIs were released, disease rates eventually increased back to their normal seasonal pattern and the burden of disease. NPIs are important and effective in reducing incidence, transmission, and mortality of diseases, and can be even more powerful when interventions are used together in a multifaceted approach.
I'm just in the slow group on this morning, but what are NPIs?
Non-pharmaceutical, like mask, social distancing, hand hygiene, hand washing.
For flu and RSV, when flu and RSV were at 0 because everybody was reporting COVID instead.
It's still a sensitive topic for people, and I think
it is. It is.
There are arguments on both sides, and I think it's.
Well, I think had there been a white paper behind it, and had there been studies and they pointed to specific things, but this was just a fluff piece that said, hey, this is my opinion on it.
I think that this commission agreed with Commissioner Friesen at the time when he asked for more data and more information. And I think this is just a conclusion of the Reno County's data and information services that were collected during that time. And it isn't anything pro or con against any one of them. I'd probably consider it pretty universal. If you wash hands, you're gonna be better off. If you have a bad cold, you stay further away from each other. That's just kind of normal, common sense conclusions. So I personally didn't see that anything wrong with
right, but that's not what this was, Ron.
Except the fact that this commission had asked for data and information, and so that's what we got.
And this is a state publication, and it's our epidemiologist that was recognized. I mean, it's an honor to have her on our staff and have her knowledge to help us with this and have that information at your hands.
Yeah, and all I'm saying is it'd be better if she got the data ahead of time instead of after the fact based on questions from the community. Because this isn't county data, this is state data, at least what you sent me. And like I said, RSV and the flu were almost at 0 during the pandemic, am I right?
Not necessarily.
I mean, you didn't hear about any cases of flu. The joke around the communities that I went to was, COVID eliminated the flu. If we want to get rid of flu, everybody needs to get COVID, which obviously wasn't true. It was just an error in reporting, in my opinion. But yeah, and I would say that if she's going to get published, she ought to do her research first. She ought to put a white paper. She ought to have specific studies she points to rather than just saying general things, because this is not data. This is a fluff piece. I'm sorry, but that's just what it is.
So, just so I understand, the conclusion of the paper is that the protocols that were in place during the pandemic affected or reduced RSV and influenza
Correct,
in Reno County.
correct.
No, not in Reno County. I don't think this is a Reno County
Yes.
specific.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's, I think
Because
that's
the-
what it says.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Any other comments?
That's all on the monthly reports. My other report, the financial report, looks like we're doing well on revenues and expenditures. Didn't know if anyone had questions. General fund, our revenues are, we're at 94% of our expected revenues for the year, so that's good. A lot of that has to do with interest rates and sales tax increases, so we're benefiting from the market. Expenditures are usually right around 50% or less for most departments. The ones that are above 50%, like information technology, it's because they buy the software at the beginning of the year, and the rest of the year is mainly just their personnel cost. So I don't see any departments or funds that are in trouble at this point. If there's no questions on that, the other thing I was just going to bring up, and I'll talk with Chairman Friesen about this a little bit more, but some study sessions that I think are going to be needed, whether we do them on a fifth Wednesday or after a normal meeting or at the end of a normal meeting. I'm wanting to meet with all the commission and discuss Cargill. They want to get some permanent space on some property north of the county property, north of the jail. Wanted to kind of talk about that and have some Cargill and have a discussion.
The mining part, right? Not the grain part.
It's part of their remediation project. They have a remediation project first, and they have to, this is why there would be a study session. I wasn't prepared for all the details today, but is to go over what they're requesting, where that location is, the impact on the community, impact, and then whether the county commission wants to move forward with giving them some land and at what cost.
Randy, just, it's not a building, it would be a well, monitoring a well
Yeah.
or an easement is the discussion.
That's the way I took it when I read
Yeah,
it.
it's a permanent easement of, I forget the footage, but it's
Is it, so it's a pretty small area?
small area, but it could impact future expansion of the jail. The jail was built to expand to the north. This is on the north side, so it would limit
Is
the
it
doubling of the.
monitoring well, or
No,
what's the purpose?
it's a monitoring well for.
They have some sort of requirement. This is the study session, but yeah, they have some requirement or request from the state to monitor water quality in the area based on something I don't even know. Historically, we
Can
talked
they
about.
put it, can we give them a little space in the right of way and like keep it out of?
They have a spot that they want. I mean, it's like Randy said. I mean, on the one sense, it's kind of it wouldn't be too obtrusive. On the other sense, if we ever wanted to expand the area up there, we'd probably limit because the jail doesn't want to. If you expand the jail, you don't want to be too close to anything, and there'd be road access.
It doesn't make any sense to put a well in that affects future growth of the facility, like.
And permanent easement.
Unless you're gonna buy it, pay the price associated with having to build the jail somewhere else in the future. Like, I would encourage you to find like a compatible spot that doesn't affect future growth before we have the study session. You might not even need it if you do that.
Randy and I debated this, but we thought it was really up to you guys to tell us what you want to do with it. So, because we had come to some similar conclusions on our own, but wanted to bring it to you guys.
I've seen a lot of, if it's a simple monitoring well, sometimes those are put, on the edge of the right of way. If that could be accommodated, it might be more of a permitting process. Otherwise, we're gonna have to.
Yeah, because the way they have the
get some
well,
value
it would,
out of that.
on the north side of the county property, it would be on the northeast corner of that property, versus if it was on the northwest, then it wouldn't have as much space. We've talked with the sheriff, we've talked about future expansion, and there's still space probably to double the size, but the permanent easement would be like almost right up against the new jail in 20, 30 years if that happens. So So that's what we kind of want, that's the topic that we want to, and we'll have more information, but we'll look into it beforehand.
If you could study a right-of-way permit as an option, that might be.
Do they have an option of going to a private business, or are they the private business on the other side? Can they put it on their own property?
I believe it's the state owns the land on the other side, and the state is not willing to, has not been something they could work with apparently.
That would be the better option if the prison would give up a little bit of their very south end of their property. It would be almost like right beside.
Like a well like this?
It's the well's not intrusive, it's the access and the road to get to it.
Just
because
put
they
it,
have to
put
get
it,
to
look,
But they don't want to.
putting it on the edge of the right-of-way. That's the easiest thing.
They, for some reason, they requested initially they want it in this other spot because we didn't talk, but we can talk to them again about that.
Or like notch out, you know, a 5x5 and they get access through the road right-of-way or something. But, okay.
We can, that,
Good.
yeah, I just wanted
Good
to
feedback.
bring up that.
There you go.
That would be coming up. The other item is I want to study session about space needs. As you know, we've had the master plan of space needs for health department, emergency management, IT, sheriff, if we need to expand in the future. So maybe just a discussion of what we found and kind of, you know, questions and answers. And I'd ask for the architect to be here to maybe answer some questions and all the directors that are involved. So just kind of giving you a heads up, that's something I'm going to be talking to Chairman Friesen about putting on a future agenda or study session.
And I don't know about you guys, but rather than a fifth Sunday, I prefer doing these after a meeting. I mean, it seems like we get them done quicker and we're more efficient with our time than if we come back on a fifth Sunday.
Fifth Wednesday.
Wednesday, yeah, sorry.
No, I would agree with that, and we'll try to do that to where we can. Unless there's objection.
Not that I don't enjoy seeing you guys an extra day out of the week, but
We understand you're married now, okay?
You have obligations.
Does that conclude your report,
Yes.
Randy? Okay, thank you. Patrick, you don't have anything? Okay. County Commission reports, number 9.
Where you start?
Sure.
Okay, all right.
Let's start with
I'll
you.
just start off. Thanks for everybody who supported the 4-H, and I hope you had a chance to go out, and if you haven't been there for a while, to see the 4-Hers in action and those who helped participate in the livestock sale and enjoyed a super prime rib steak that night, courtesy of Leaf First National Bank. I want to say congratulations to those Mueller FFA students who received quite an honor and spent a lot of time working on their certifications in both agronomy and livestock, and that's a great program for them to have and the ability to get that certification. And I would like to urge you before the next meeting is to think about a small cut in tech rather than that huge cut. I would like to see that accomplished, maybe a $10,000 cut or something, just to look at that process rather than a large cut, because there is a need for assistance and giving them an opportunity, giving tech an opportunity to look at other funding sources too in the meantime. But there is quite a, if you haven't been out to see tech in process and to see what those kids do, I guess it's not all kids, they're grown-ups, but to see the work that they do and the things, I would encourage you to make a trip out there and see what they do. So.
I might take a few liberties since that was on my list too, to maybe open just an informal discussion if there's any other commissioners interested on the tech item. Like like my feedback to those that have responded is it's been hard for me to, you know, understand why, you know, one nonprofit should, you know, get county tax money and another nonprofit shouldn't. And I think it's been really hard to explain. And I think even, you know, Jim, the former CFO, wasn't quite certain where it started. You know, how we got from 0 to 550,000. And so, man, I agree with everything related to value and impact in our community that I've heard from all the feedback. Just I continue to like struggle with, you know, a uniform policy for supporting nonprofits and the differentiation between tech and, say, United Way, as an example. And so, like, I don't want to hurt such a valuable organization in the community. I did hear comments from the commission. It's like, you know, is this like, absent the value it's providing to the community, is the equal treatment, you know, taking this down to 0 eventually? Like, I think we need to label that and put that out there so we know where we're headed, because I think that could be even more surprising to the agency. And at like that, 100,000 one thing, 500,000's significantly different. And I don't think anyone here wants to hurt such a valuable organization in the community, but communicating the reality of whether it's this commission's policy to provide tax money to nonprofits. I think we need to continue to have that conversation and be very forward with an agency, because like you make a very valid point. Jim made a very valid point. Like, they rely on this money, and we have to kind of you know, marry that with the reality on what our policy is. And I think I would benefit from understanding where this started. And I know there's some reference to statute related to you know, an authorization, and maybe Patrick, you could help on whether this is a statute which obligates the county or a statute that authorizes the county to use tax funding.
It really is a statute that authorizes and doesn't obligate a specific amount. And I think if people looked at the budgets of every different county, they'd see pretty wide variety of funding. When I've looked into it, historically, when people started to realize that individuals with disabilities needed different care and needed to have somewhere to go and have somewhere to train, these things got funded on the local level. But then state and federal programs kind of came into being, and so we kind of have the system's evolved over time a lot. And in some sense, the county funding aspect of it is kind of a holdover from the way these started, where they started kind of like a county hospital or a county locally controlled organization, and over time they've kind of morphed into where more of their funding is state and federal, although they still get county. But when Randy and I started the budget process, we looked at the authorizing statutes for this entity and all the other entities that had been funded in the past, and we looked at which ones were funded based on just a resolution, just a county decision under our local powers, and which ones had a state statute that obligated something, such as extension was one that, you know, kind of had it, and fair have some state statutes that have requirements, and which ones were may and said the county may fund them. And so this is one of the ones where there's a strong tradition of counties giving a lot of funding for these kinds of entities, but the statute just says you may fund them, and it doesn't give you any help as to, maybe in the past there were mills that were dedicated, but when the state revised those, it's no longer like tied to a specific amount. So I can't offer too much I can't help you too much.
Well,
other than
you,
just
you
give you-
answered the question on whether, there's an obligation or an authorization. It sounds like
Right.
it's authorized that we can spend that money, and like, there are other comments or feelings like, okay, why isn't the city of Hutch putting money into tech? I think it was just priorities at the time of the different governing bodies, and that seems a little arbitrary to me. And so I'm just, again, trying to wrap my head around, like, whether it's good public policy. Okay, I got him, and then you, on this matter. And it may be fair, like, the one thing I'm surprised, I really haven't heard from the agency themselves. I've heard from a lot of advocates, and if the commission feels like this warrants further discussion, I mean, it certainly would be fair to let tech have an opportunity to defend themselves here. We certainly, in retrospect, the feedback I'm getting, it's like it was a big cut and a little out of the blue. I think part of that was related to, equalizing things, but I don't know if the commission's okay with letting them come, or if the decision's been made and we don't want to do that, but that's my feedback. Commissioner Parks.
Well, I think the decision's been made to a certain degree where we'd have to cover it a different way, correct, Randy?
That is correct.
With funds, if we rescind that.
General fund is the only place you probably could move
So
money.
we have to make a cut to maintain in a different area.
Yes, it
To
would take
maintain
a,
that at this point with the revenue neutral.
correct, because we can't change the
We
revenue
can't change
neutral
what
now.
we resolution.
And the
voted.
budget has already been published, so each department within that fund is kind of already set.
Well, I don't know that I know the exact history of it, but having worked there for 10 years, I know under Maurice Cummins, which started tech, and several other agencies around the state. And I think one of the more brilliant men in that industry doing that at the time. I remember back in the 90s when they came to the commission and lobbied, because I think of that as kind of some around the time when CDDO was created from the state, where they were picking an agency of a county to funnel down through from state hospitals, as I remember correctly.
And there can only be one CDDO.
And there can only be one CDDO, and so I think the funding probably increased at that time because of the needs of the influx of clientele that they had. And so that may be part of where some of that came from, but I would agree that we need to go forward in some kind of a further policy for this board to explain to people where we're at with reducing outside agencies. On that thought, well, I kind of lost my thought there for a second, but if we rescind that, we're going to have to rescind the others. It takes me back to a meeting we went to here a month or so ago over at El Dorado, where we had one of the commissioners from Sedgwick County made a comment that's still stuck in my mind. A lot of the things we do on outside agencies, I think every one of us would find something we don't agree with that they provide or do provide, and certainly some of the agendas they stand behind. One of the things, if I recall, Randy, you can refresh my memory, you were there, that they decided to do, instead of a resolute funding for those agencies, it is what they call that, a donation from the county. They reworded that. A couple of reasons I say that is because that unties our hands to the funding of what they do with it. There are things going on in the world today that we don't agree with where the funding's going. I'll typify that with the United Way. They support some organizations and some things that go on that I would not support. I'm not saying everything they do in whole is bad, but that is something along with this maybe changing a policy we want to look at doing something like that. I don't know how that would work out, Patrick, if we looked at doing something like that, but they did that, and and I'm not going to name the agendas today that they were specifically talking about in the open meeting, but I think you can probably understand what I'm saying, that there's some funding that was trickling down that was supporting some of these things that the public absolutely disagreed with, so they decided to change the wording to make it a donation from the county. And I kind of agree with that, but then if we're smart enough to know we don't want to fund that, we don't fund that. So.
But he is right. The constituents have harped on that. They don't want their money spent in certain areas, and that's that's why I keep saying some of these agencies that are kind of in a special niche got through in that same box. And in this round of cuts, but the people are sick and tired of taxes, and I'm just piggybacking on you, and it's not my turn, so I'll take my time later.
Commissioner Weitzel, you had
Yeah, so I think when we started this process, at least the way I understand is the question wasn't, are these agents good for the community? Do they do worthy things? The question was, is it right to take money from taxpayers by force and then give it to these outside agencies when the taxpayers themselves could individually donate to them, or as a group go out and raise funds for these deals? It's kind of like the old story of a man that comes up to you with a gun, says, "Give me $100," and then goes and gives it to charity. Well, did you really donate to charity, or was the money taken from you and then given to charity by somebody else? I think that these outside agencies should find their own funding, and that it's time for the county to end the practice of taking money by force from our citizens through higher taxes and then giving to these organizations. And so I think I advocated from the beginning to fund them down to zero, but the agreement was, well, let's give them some time to get used to it. Not because they're not great organizations, not because they don't do good, but because they can raise the money themselves rather than the county doing it by force. Because, if somebody says, hey, I'm not going to pay the portion of my property taxes that go to tech, since that's who we're talking about, then they could lose their house or their car. So this isn't a donation. This is taking money from our taxpayers and then giving it to these organizations.
Well, I do think it sounds like there's really good consensus on this kind of was birthed through a budget discussion, but we really need a robust conversation on a policy on this, and to be clear on where we're headed, because it's only fair to the agencies, up or down. So I think, Randy, early fall, let's try to start creating a framework for a policy that we can bring to the commission for a good conversation.
We can look into that. And I just wanted to also point out that for tech, Kevin Hess, the CEO, did reach out to me. I talked with him, and I know he's emailed each commissioner inviting you guys to go do a tour and to talk with him on a one-on-one basis. So that option is out there if you want to find out more about tech and the impacts of this $100,000 cut.
I think to Commissioner Weitzel's point, I think some people are missing the point here. It's like they're definitely, and for me, like top 3 agencies of high value to our community. It's a unique, and they're adding great skill sets to a population base that's generally underserved in any community. And so, I think everybody thinks it's a fantastic organization. It's a principal matter of where the funding's coming from. And so we do need to be more explicit as an agency on what our policy is, because I can see how it felt unfair to just get the rug pulled, but it's part of the budget process. And so appreciate the conversation on this item, and it sounds like we can have some further clarifying discussion on a meeting item in the future. So I kind of piggybacked on your item. I'll just keep going on my stuff since I started my comments. I think I'm just going to stop there. So you were there. So did you have comments?
Yeah,
comments?
I did.
Weitzel?
So I believe it was last meeting or the meeting before, we talked about unclaimed property and and should that go back to the county or should it go back to the state? And I was like, I hadn't checked the website, so and I got a check for $43.90 from the state for unclaimed property, and it was kind of cool to get. And in the future, I hope we'll considering instead of the county taking back the money for this unclaimed property, that we send it to the state so other citizens can have the same experience that I did. So I thought I'd put that in there. The county fair was this week. Very cool to those who went out. A lot of local kids had a lot of local things in there, and it was really neat to see. State fair's coming up in September, so that'll be a lot of fun as well. Also wanted to shout out the Fox Theater for showing the new movie, what is it, Rise of Freedom, I think it is. But they're, I believe, having it again this weekend for $5. So if you haven't seen it and are interested in learning more about child trafficking and the stories that have gone on there, a great movie. There are certain people that don't want you to see it, so I would encourage you to get out. It's $5, so maybe buy a Pepsi and a popcorn while you're there. Help support a local business, but I appreciate them showing that movie.
Commissioner
It's
Parks?
me. A couple of things. I had a couple of people that had approached me, and I talked to Randy about with tax delinquency on things that they'd sold without a bill of sale or otherwise. I had one that had been continued to be taxed for 7 years on a boat that he sold for very little. He's about to pay the cost of the boat out here for long that he sold, and he has tried repeatedly to fill the forms out to get that off the tax roll, and it hasn't happened. And so Randy had made contact and reached out for me. I'm just doing this publicly to say, because there was 2 of them. Another one was on an RV that they got rid of, and theirs was $50 a year. The other was, I don't know what it was, something around that. Trying to get it off. And I know they're not the only 2. I ran onto others throughout the course of time. There's a lot of confusion about how to get that canceled, and a lot of times it's out of state or otherwise. You're not able to retrieve a bill of sale at that point. So I think there needs to be maybe an easier way somehow for them to do that, and maybe it's not as epidemic as I think. I don't necessarily want to take tax off the roll, but if it's due to come off, it needs to come off. And these 2 people have been paying several years, and they have tried a couple of times to get that relieved. So as I understand from Randy, I'd reached out and communicated to them that they could reach out to Michael Plank to be able to get that resolved as well. And so I appreciate you doing that. And they were appreciative of that as well. It's not a great deal of money. If it had been $500 a year, $1,000 or something, they'd have been a little more insistent, I'm sure. But it's not fair to them to continue to pay. So I'm sure there's others out there, and I just want to extend that if anybody hears this. Also, I had visited with Randy about a building that for Adam. I don't know where we're at with that, whether he considered that or not. There was a building that's available that's not for sale that I kind of drove by one day and had an epiphany, thinking maybe that would work for his organization to go there. There's room to build to the west of it, some for bays for maybe the equipment. And I don't know whether that was something that you visited with him about, that he thinks would be a workable situation. There's adequate parking and some other stuff as well with that, but it may not be big enough. But
I have talked with him. It may be enough for the offices and maybe the EOC with a lot of remodeling, but it wouldn't take care of the storage probably, unless there's additional space or building space on that property. I know there's housing on both sides, but
well, that west lot is, man, I don't know what they're housing for. I just looked at it. I've done a lot of construction projects. That's the reason I brought it to the table before him and Randy, because the price on this building is certainly right. It's not very old. They're wanting 4 offices that can be created in the front. There's plenty of room for 4 offices. You do not need a 20 by 20 office to operate out of. And so there's plenty of room for offices and a vestibule entrance. And it's just a blank canvas in the back with 2 brand new bathrooms. So, but if there, can somebody enlighten me? At least I'd like to know what kind of equipment they need to put inside trailer-wise, because I've not seen them.
they have multiple trailers for during.
Are they, how wide are they and long are they?
I don't know the size, but we store them at the state fairgrounds. We pay.
Well, that's what I was curious, because there's adequate room to the west side to make a dual bay running through there to come in and out of there for 2 8-foot wide trailers and vehicles to go through there. So I felt as though it would work, and it'd be something we ought to discuss, because it'd be a whole lot more money than what he's got an outlay for doing that. And having viewed the training facilities and that stuff out there at with Chief Beer, where he lands when they need extra space, and even the grassy area where they look to build, this is a bigger area than what he was looking to build. in my estimation, he was wanting 10,000 square foot. This would be closer to 7. It would be a little bit 60-some hundred. Is that what that building is?
I think it was around 6, yeah.
60-some hundred, but then you have a 50-foot by full-length lot on the other side, and I'm sure it wouldn't be any big deal to build to the property line almost with some variance to put 2 bays down there to pull their equipment through a secure-sided building. So I would like to pursue that further, but just it would immediately free up room here. And if we didn't use that in the future permanently, I'm just throwing this out to the board, we'll just leave it at that, but it could also be used for emergency services of some other kind later on. There is bays there. But I will say that the price is well below, probably a quarter of what he's looking, and it wouldn't take a whole lot to finish it within some funds that we have available, I think, to make that happen fairly soon. So,
And that building is listed, we have a list on it, or we have it listed as an option. And I've talked with Adam when we have a study session to talk about all the departments, all the needs, that can be, that'll be brought up at that point.
Okay.
Because there's other options also.
there are, that's fine. I just wanted to throw that out so they're aware. You and I talked about that, and maybe Commissioner Friesen was, I don't know, but just so it gets some brain trust going here. So, and that's all I got.
Commissioner Parks, Commissioner Bogner?
Well, I meet with a group of constituents from the northern end of my district on a monthly basis. And the question was asked the other day, well, what's going on at the county? And I said, well, we've decided we are going to be revenue neutral. Your taxes shouldn't go up. And Susan of the group says, Don, you know better than that. Taxes always go up. So I'll acknowledge her correction. They won't go up because of what happened with Reno County per se, but there are a group of taxing entities depending on where you live, as long as you're a hand, that's also on that tax bill. And we cannot control what they do. And unfortunately, what I've been reading in the papers recently, I know for sure two of the school boards that I contribute to aren't going to remain neutral. I know certain cities aren't. I don't know what's happening with the junior college and some of these other entities. This is, like I said, as long as your hand. So I was made aware that I need to state that a little differently. It's not because of this group, but there again, this budget deal is one of the toughest things ever, and people are making comments and caused us to do certain things. And but the reality is, when they get that tax statement, from what I see in the papers and stuff, our taxes will go up. Not as a result of what Reno County did. Our departments, I feel, really looked into doing a lot of good things to hold the line. But we're one of many, and as an employee of Reno County pointed out to me, by statute, we got to collect the taxes and we've got to send them out. And what's the biggest thing on the form at the top? Reno County. So we're going to catch the grief for what everybody else did. It's because our name's on it, on the top, whether we're responsible or not. And, just a little thought, comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Bogner. Commissioner Parks?
Just one quick thing, and then I'll be quiet. Randy and I have talked about it a couple of times. K-Camp, I was sitting here looking at my pen from a meeting. I don't know if it was K-Works or K-Camp, the insurance, but I approached them in Hayes at the meeting, and their attorney was there, and they would love to bid our insurance. I know we currently have Bob Fee doing that, but they're capable of writing the policies that cover the county. I don't know if that's health-wise or just liability policies, and so And he promised that he did it some years ago, and I think it was prior to Randy being here as well, because we talked about it. And that they had met all of the obligations with a smaller policy in dollars and then was not accepted. So I have questions with that. I would like to explore that and see, because if we can get the same kind of little liability coverages and save some money, we all know health insurance, liability insurance, payroll, those things are huge. And if we can lower those dollars, I mean, I'm all for staying local, but of the 105 counties or whatever there is, I think 90% of them or more are on this insurance, big or small as well. And I think it would behoove us to look into it. I know it's a pool, that's a little concerning. I get that, but there's a whole lot of things that we're into our pools at this point. And so I'd like to throw that out for further discussion later on, maybe, that we look at that, because if they can save money, I don't know that we need to be married to one person. I was in the meeting when you guys talked about that prior to being in office last year, and I never heard anything about a competitor bid other than just Mr. Fee. Nothing wrong with Mr. Fee's organization. There are only certain entities that can write for emergency services or other things. So you can't just get anybody to do it, but.
I think we had at least one other bid, didn't we?
They went to the market to check. They had a couple other
they
bids.
went to the market. This is a state organization working for county.
Because it's a pool. That's
Yeah,
why
right.
it's not this. It's a different
Right.
kind of insurance.
Right.
It's
I
not
get
really
it.
insurance. It's you put your money in, hoping it gets covered.
Right.
I just was gonna comment, Barton, we did an RFP for insurance and K-Camp presented on it, and it is just, it's harder to make the apples and apples comparison with them, although what they offer a lot of counties like, I'm not saying it's bad, it gets, but maybe if that's something you guys wanna look at, you can. But it was an interesting presentation, it's just different.
Okay. I think that,
I've been involved twice in that insurance decisions, and it just didn't seem to quite work for Reno County at that time. Now, not saying it might next time.
Okay, well, that's what I wanted some feedback on this evening. Thank you.
okay, that concludes the commission reports and comments. We're gonna take a 5-minute break, 5 or 6 minutes. Stand by for a motion here.
For your information, the sheriff has said we could use their space for the executive session.
Okay, is the first one the DA?
No.
Okay,
Should have, I think I listed in those, who's with us.
okay, just a second, I'm sorry, should have that pulled up. I'd like to move the board recess. We're gonna take a small break of about 5 minutes, and how much time do we? 30, so we're gonna recess and into executive session starting at 11:15, approximately ending at 11:45, to include the county administrator, county counselor, health department administrator, and the health officer. The justification for the executive session is discussion of job performance of non-elected personnel, and the subject matter is personnel matters of non-elected personnel. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Hurst. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Okay. One second. We are back from executive session, and I'd like to make a motion for a second executive session for the board to recess in the executive session until 12:15 with the county administrator, county counselor, district attorney joining us in the executive session. The justification for the executive session is discussion of job performance of non-elected personnel. The subject matter is personnel matters of non-elected personnel. Is there a second?
I'll say.
Second by Commissioner Parks. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Okay. We'll excuse staff that wasn't